There may be rotten apples in the fruit bowl, but it doesn't mean that every single piece of the fruit does get affected. This is a process that is difficult, that creates a huge amount of uncertainty, also for all the candidates, of course. Everything where we can look into, in principle, can be the beginning of a doubt. My advice would be a clean judge, be a clean prosecutor. I think
that's your life.
Yeah.
Mr. Hebel, thank you for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to have you in our studio. And first and foremost, I'd like to start from the start.
Yeah.
The pre-vetting commission started its works like more than 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So during this half of the year, what picture did you paint for yourself about the justice system in Moldova? And was it surely the only way to go, like with the pre-vetting commission, to address the issues that the system has? And if so, was the system that flawed as you thought it would be?
Well, to start with the last, I had no expectations for myself when I came here. I know that the government has created the pre-vetting commission. That is done normally in a situation when there are really serious problems with the judicial system, like also in Albania and Ukraine and in other countries. So I knew, of course, or I could expect that there were serious problems. But of course, I think the most important thing about our whole process is to identify which judges and prosecutors have levels of integrity and which are not. So you don't look at only the system in its totality, you have to look at each and every candidate itself. And because we always talk, of course, about corrupt judges and corrupt prosecutors, but let's also be clear about the fact that there are also non-corrupt and honest and judges with high integrity and whatever. And you have to make that distinction between them and keep the good and, of course, be critical about where there are problems. There may be rotten apples in the fruit bowl, but it doesn't mean that every single piece of the fruit does get affected and infected. So there are good people in the system, and that is what we have to focus on.
Let's dig in more into that, into the evaluation process. Yeah. So what's the process of gathering information looks like, and what are you looking into? Where do you start to dig, so to say?
We start with the candidates themselves. We ask them, we have developed a big template with all kind of questions about their financial backgrounds, real estate, cars, income, loans, donations, etc. And then, so there's a lot of financial information they have to provide, also information about how they have been acting as a judge in the past, whether there have been any issues, any challenges to their decisions.
How many questions are these?
Oh, there's about 40, 50 questions in there. And then in addition to that, we look for so many other different sources. We have information from the tax authorities, from the Anti-Corruption Commission, from the border police, from private banks, etc. So the amount of information that we have is enormous. And then you don't know where to look for at the beginning. You have to look at every single issue of all that information. And then only after a while you actually identify what are some major issues or potential major issues with the candidate, and then you start digging deeper into those aspects.
How long does it take to piece together a single folder of a single person? Like, it's quite a lot.
Oh, that is, yeah, it's quite a lot, and it takes a couple of days actually to really analyze that. And then the team that supports us, the secretariat, they produce a document by which they identify those issues. Then the commission members have a look at that, and the 3 international members, 3 national members, they look into that. And then we identify, hey, wait a minute, there's a question about it. Let's dig deeper here. And then what we do is we ask questions to those candidates and saying, hey, we see this issue. Can you explain what the background to this is? Or we see this bank account. What happened to that bank account during those years? And so we ask hundreds of questions to those candidates They submit the answers in writing. We often give them a limited number of 4 or 5 days or so. Then they come back with their answers, and then we may have follow-up questions by which we say, hey, that is still not clear to us. Let us look into more in depth on those issues. And so only once we have identified all the major issues, then we prepare for a hearing of candidates, and we're going to have hearings in the course of this week again, and then we have further questions about the candidates, and then we are going to take a decision. So it's a long process.
Moldovan media had a pretty long fight and a pretty long history with corrupt judges and prosecutors, like trying to expose them in the investigations in the media. Do you also look into the press articles? And if so, were they helpful for you?
Yeah, we have been looking, and we've also been reaching out. So also now again, any press information that can be given to us, or any investigative journalist that is interested in candidates and has information, please send it to us. We do look at that material, and it can be of help. Absolutely, all pieces of information can be of help. And can help us out in really identifying whether a candidate can pass or fail the evaluation.
So how would you describe the first results of the evaluation process? Because there are already a few cases of candidates that didn't succeed the evaluation. And what's the next step for you and for them in case they fail the evaluation?
Yeah. What is one of the problems that we see is that when we come to the final decision, that decision goes to the candidate, and then it's the candidate who determines whether he or she would like the decision to become public. We cannot decide that, which is unfortunate, because you can imagine that a candidate who has been evaluated and by which the pre-vetting commission says there are no problems, this candidate can pass and become a candidate for being elected in the Superior Council of the Magistracy. But they, of course, want to have that decision become public, saying, hey, I'm clean, you know? But what about candidates that where we come to the conclusion that the evaluation means that they cannot pass the evaluation because there are issues of integrity in there? Of course, the chances that they don't want those decisions to become public is high.
All right.
So in the end, most of all those decisions that may be negative may not necessarily become public and publicly accessible. And that's a pity.
Why is that? Is the legislation works like this, and why it's not the public interest who's prevailing?
Yeah, this was it is in the law which governs our work, and the ministry put it in, the parliament put it in the law because they were advised by the Venice Commission in Strasbourg to do so, because they were concerned about the reputation of a judge. I must say personally, and also Commission, we feel that is not a very convincing argument, because the people in the country here in Moldova should know which judges are of high integrity and which are not. You know, it's a public interest as well. That's the whole purpose of our project. So we would have liked to see that law would have been different so that we can produce our decisions. Now we can only say by the end of our work, someone has failed the evaluation, someone has passed the evaluation.
Some of the subjects that were evaluated already started hearings, and more of them to come. What the Commission is trying to accomplish by these hearings, and what's the outcome, if you may, for the public and for the system?
I think those hearings are very fundamental. It's one thing, as I said, you know, we start with written procedures, but it's always good in a public hearing to give the candidate the opportunity to explain issues, and then during the hearing we come up with questions. We give the candidate the opportunity to also respond to our questions and to bring any other information that they think is relevant. And once the hearing is done, then we say, okay, then we withdraw, and then we deliberate, and then we take a decision as to whether or not a candidate passes or fails, and then we put that in a decision to be adopted by all the members of the Commission, and then we finalize it and then send it to the candidate, and then the decision whether or not to publish.
Is this participation mandatory, and if so, were people that refused to come to the hearings?
we identified doubts about their financial and professional integrity.
Were there many doubts like that?
And everything where we can look into, in principle, can be the beginning of a doubt. But then it's for the candidate to provide information to take away the doubt that we may have. So the more there is the cooperation, the more there is also an openness, the more there is also the possibility that we really have a good view about what happens and what has happened and what is their integrity. And so that also, in the end, coming also to your question, sort of, are they obliged to participate? No, they're not obliged to participate. But our law is very clear. If you do not come to the hearing, then we take a decision based on the information that we have. And therefore, it's the candidate who only takes away the opportunity for him or herself to explain any questions and concerns that we may have. So it's actually in the interest of a candidate to be transparent, to provide full information, and to participate in the hearings.
Let me spin the question around. Were there a lot of folders or a lot of candidates where the income and the declaration of money don't fit, like a salary of €100 and a villa somewhere?
These kind of issues do come up. Of course, we look into all the information, But of course, you have them candidates who are able to provide all the information, and where you see that looks good. But you also have candidates say, "Oh yeah, but I got money from this family member or from that family member." Oh, but wait a minute, that family member didn't have much of a taxable income. How can you say that a family member was able to give you a few $100,000 lei if the income of that person is not that much? How can you loan more to yourself, to someone, than your own income? That's not possible. It's these kind of very logical questions, actually, that we ask, and to which we then get a response.
We as people are very doubtful, so I'm gonna ask a follow-up. Do you think some people forge some information that you look to and you think, oh, that's good? Do you think there may be something like a double check after that, after you look at their proofs that their income is clean, and then maybe double check that maybe it's a forged document?
That is a difficult one. I think normally you see it you have so much information from different sources, from banks, from the cadastre, from public notaries, from the contracts, but also from contracts from people who are buying and selling, etc. So we have the opportunity to look at things from different perspectives, and then sometimes it's quite obvious that something cannot be right. Sometimes we have examples of judges who have a car, they buy a car, and then 5 years later they sell the car, and then the selling price is higher than the buying price, which is not a very logical thing that happens with cars. Normally they devaluate, they don't normally increase in value. So that is one of those things where we may have doubts. But then if a judge can say, oh, hey, wait a minute, you know what, that car was not in perfect shape, I did a lot of repairs, and hey, here are the bills of all the repairs I made, that could be an explanation. Moving
on to a couple of interviews you've had before. After you've got elected, you talked a bit in the beginning of our interview about Albania and the vetting process in Albania. So it started 6 years ago, and I looked it up, and since the vetting process started in Albania, the country actually has fallen down, let me say, on the list of the world's most corrupt countries, 27 places. So it even got worse after the vetting process started. How come, considering that the whole point of this vetting process is to make the country cleaner and less corrupt?
I think that it is also a transitional process, of course, because and there the process is different because we look only at the pre-vetting, so we only look at candidates to become a member of the Superior Council of Magistracy and Prosecutors. Over there, if someone goes through the vetting process and they do not pass, it also means that they have to leave their job. So the consequences are way more severe. And it also means that what we have seen in Albania is that a huge number of judges and prosecutors did not pass, and therefore there's a huge shortage in terms of number of judges available, number of prosecutors available. So that may mean that new corruption cases are not being investigated, are not being prosecuted because there are not sufficient numbers of prosecutors and judges available. That could be an explanation. But it depends, of course, also on so many other factors, organized crime, links with other countries, and all these kind of things. So it's very difficult to say, you know what, number of clean judges means what is the status on that kind of index.
And following up this question, I have an assumption, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like after the works of the Commission will be completed here in Moldova, the system could bounce back to ground zero. So, with the same corrupt and flawed behaviors as before the Commission. Is it true in your perspective? Is it wrong in your perspective? How do you think the Moldovan judiciary system will look like after the works of the Commission is complete?
I think what we're doing is only one step. And it is an important first step. So, as I just said, it is about candidates for the Superior Council of Magistracy and prosecutors who are then responsible for the promotion and development of careers of judges and prosecutors. So this in itself is not enough. What needs to happen is more, and we know that the government is now looking into also the development of a vetting procedure for Supreme Court judges, maybe also for other judges, maybe also for other prosecutors. So going beyond the pre-vetting also into really vetting of prosecutors and judges, and whereby you have the same situation as Albania. If they don't pass, then they also will lose their job. But there again, these are important steps, but also Albania shows there's more to be done. It's also about the training of judges and prosecutors. It's also about the quality of and the capacity to investigate organized crime and corruption. These are not easy exercises to do. So it is so much more necessary there, or so much more needed than only the pre-vetting and the vetting.
Okay, since the Commission was established, there were enough critiques about it and the way it was formed.
Yeah.
No offense, voices were heard saying how come foreigners have to come and evaluate our judges and prosecutors. What do you think about these critiques and how do you address them?
Being, of course, one of those foreigners myself, no, I think it has added value. If I wouldn't think that there was no added value for me, why would I be here? So there is added value. We bring, together with my two other colleagues, we bring a huge amount of experience from those international standards that should apply and which also should be part of the judicial system here in Moldova. So all that kind of experience that we bring here is helpful together with our national colleagues who of course know and understand the Moldovan context much better than we do. But it's that sort of combination of our experiences which really make this a very interesting and valuable process.
Did you feel any pressure coming from the political side, government, opposition, you name it, regarding the works of the Commission? And besides this, had you had anyone from the judiciary system itself try to corrupt or pressure you?
Yeah, no, it's both two times no.
Okay, right.
No, of course there is contact with the government. We inform them about what we are doing, and what I see and what we see is a government who really wants this process to go incredibly fast. Of course, they also make promises to the public about the creation of a new SCM and a new SCP, etc. And I value and I appreciate the desire to come with results and to come with results.
Yeah, but you know, the pressure can be also work faster. This can be also the pressure.
Yeah, and
Is it there?
we have good discussions about it. For me and for the Commission, what we look into is the quality of our decisions. You know, one of my colleagues from Georgia, in Georgia there was 15 years ago was a similar process of also trying to get rid of corrupt judges, so they had was a different process than what we do here. But what happened is that judges who were then thrown out of the system, they went to Strasbourg, to the European Court of Human Rights, and Strasbourg said, hey, but the process by which you were thrown out was not fair. Because people were reinstated in their system, and therefore the whole judicial reform almost sort of came to a collapse. You don't want that, you know. You want to make sure that what we do here is high quality decision making, by which those decisions stand for scrutiny by the Supreme Court, maybe also stand for scrutiny by the European Court of Human Rights, so that our decisions are sustainable for years to come. You don't want to have a fallback in a couple of years from now. And this is a process that is difficult, that creates a huge amount of uncertainty, also for all the candidates, of course. And this is not something that you can do again in a couple of years from now. You can do it now, you have to do it right, and then for years you have to be able to rely on the results of our work. The law by which the Commission was created is a car, but we had to develop the four wheels in order to make that car move. We have developed those wheels. They are now under that car, and now we will be able to move faster than we have done so far. I'm absolutely confident about that. And we are confident that in summer next year, our work of those pre-vetting of those 100 candidates will be done.
So you just gave me an idea when you talked about Georgia, when all the judges and prosecutors that were thrown from the system went to the European Court. What do you think will be in the case of Moldova? So if these judges that are corrupt, that are that their folders are not okay, that they're thrown out of the system, where they will end up in? Like, what will become of them? In which field will they then start to work? I mean, those people will still be in our society. Does this mean that the judiciary system will be cleaner, but the other system where they will employ themselves after will start to be more corrupt?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think there again, for us, we're talking only about pre-vetting. So those candidates that we look into, and if we evaluate and we come to the conclusion that they cannot pass the evaluation, they in itself do not lose their job. They continue to be a judge or later on a prosecutor. The only result of that is that they will no longer be able to be a candidate to be elected into the SCM and the SCP. So the effects of the pre-vetting in that respect are limited. Those judges can, of course, continue to work in their own present job. You know, with vetting, of course, that will be different, because by then the outcome of that evaluation will actually lead to, I think, in all likelihood, to the loss of their job. So that is way more serious as well. What they will do then, that is up to them. You know, I don't have an answer for them. I don't have an advice for them. My advice would be a clean judge, be a clean prosecutor.
The next hearings are to start soon. What messages do you have for the candidates and for the public, and what awaits us next?
I think for me the most important thing is that process, that we as a commission have the obligation to apply a very fair and open and transparent process. And I think the quality of our work is helped by the candidates being open and transparent as well. And we see a good number of candidates who do exactly that. Unfortunately, not all candidates, that is quite obvious. But I think the most important is be transparent, provide the information, work, collaborate with the Commission, and we will provide very fair and decent decisions. We really go deep, but we also want to make sure that when we say someone cannot pass, that we really have serious doubts about someone's background, and that is not something that we decide just simply on a Friday afternoon. This is very serious legal work, and that's also why it sometimes takes, according to some people, maybe take longer than they had hoped for, but it is the quality that determines the outcome of this process.